Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're going to absolutely nail a topic that can be a real game changer for your CUET score: stereochemistry in haloalkanes. Let's dive right in and lock down those extra marks.
Let's be real for a second. Do you ever feel like you understand the basics, but then the moment they mix in SN1 or SN2 reactions, your brain just goes blank? Yeah? If that sounds familiar, you are in exactly the right place. Stick with me, because by the end of this short explainer, that confusion is going to be gone, for good.
And why should you care so much? Because of this number right here, plus 8 marks. Let that sink in. Mastering this one concept can literally add up to 8 marks to your score. You know, that could be the difference between your dream college and your backup plan. So yeah, let's get focused.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start with why this is so important for the exam. Then we'll build our foundation with chirality, dive deep into the outcomes of SN1 versus SN2 reactions, master a few key concepts, I'll give you a great memory trick, and then we'll finish up with the common traps you need to avoid. Let's do this.
So first things first, why all the fuss about this topic? It's because the people who set the CUE exam love asking about reaction mechanisms. And stereochemistry isn't just about memorizing some definitions, it's about predicting the 3D shape of your products. And that is the key to unlocking those tricky mechanism questions every single time.
All right, let's lay down the groundwork. Think of these as the fundamental building blocks of stereochemistry. Everything, and I mean everything, starts with these two ideas: chirality and isomerism. If you can get this part right, trust me, the rest of it just clicks into place.
So, what on earth is a chiral carbon? Look, the rule is super simple, and you have to burn this into your brain. It's a carbon atom that's attached to 4, count them, 4 different groups. The best analogy? It's your hands. They're mirror images of each other, right? But you can't perfectly stack your left hand on top of your right. It just doesn't work. That's what we call non-superimposable.
Let's make this real with a classic example: 2-chlorobutane. Zero in on that second carbon atom. What's attached to it? Well, you've got a hydrogen, a chlorine, a methyl group, and an ethyl group. Are all 4 of those different? You bet they are. And boom, that makes this carbon chiral. Now, this special property, this chirality, makes the molecule optically active, which just means it has the cool ability to rotate light.
But hold on, there's a small catch. Just having a chiral carbon isn't an automatic guarantee of optical activity. The molecule as a whole has to be lopsided, asymmetric. This means you can't slice it down the middle and get 2 identical halves. That's called a plane of symmetry, and it kills the activity. Also, as we're about to see, if you have a perfect 50-50 mix of mirror image molecules, the whole solution becomes inactive too.
All right, deep breath. We're now getting to the absolute heart of this topic. This is where the big marks are hiding in your CUET exam. How do SN1 and SN2 reactions actually affect the 3D structure of the products? Let's break it down, nice and simple.
Let's start with SN2. Think of SN2 as a direct, aggressive, one-step process. The nucleophile doesn't wait around. It attacks the carbon from the complete opposite side of the leaving group. We call this a backside attack. The best way to picture it is to imagine an umbrella flipping inside out in a super strong gust of wind. That's exactly what happens to the molecule's shape. It completely inverts.
And here is the absolute key takeaway. You have to remember this. An SN2 reaction gives you 100% complete inversion of configuration. There's a fancy name for it, Walden inversion, but it just means the 3D arrangement of the atoms totally flips. If you start with an R configuration, you are guaranteed to end up with the S configuration. It's a clean, total flip.
Now let's switch gears to SN1. This is a totally different story. It's a more patient 2-step dance. In the first step, the leaving group just leaves, all on its own, and it leaves behind a carbocation intermediate. Now this is the most crucial part. That carbocation is flat. It's planar. Think of it like a pancake. Because it's flat, the incoming nucleophile can now attack from the top or from the bottom with an equal 50-50 chance.
Okay, people, this slide right here, this is your ultimate revision tool. Seriously, take a screenshot of this. For SN1, you get a planar carbocation, attack from both sides, and the product is a mix. That's called racemization. For SN2, there's no intermediate, it's a backside attack, and the product is 100% flipped, inversion. And don't forget that carbocation in SN1 means rearrangements can happen. They can't in SN2. This table is pure gold.
Awesome. We've got the main mechanisms down.
Now, let's just polish things up a bit by mastering a few key terms that the exam might use to try and trick you. So we keep saying that SN1 reactions lead to a racemous mixture. What does that actually mean? Well, it's just a perfect 50-50 mixture of two enantiomers. You know, the left-hand and right-hand versions of a molecule. Imagine the right-hand molecule rotates light by, say, plus 10 degrees. Its mirror image will rotate light by exactly minus 10 degrees. So when you mix them together perfectly, they cancel each other out. The total rotation is 0, and the mixture is optically inactive.
And listen up, because this is a huge trap that so many students fall into. A racemic mixture is not the same thing as an achiral compound. A racemic mixture is made up of chiral molecules, but it's inactive because of external cancellation between the two different types. An achiral compound, on the other hand, is inactive because the molecule itself has some kind of internal symmetry, or maybe just no chiral center at all. It's a big difference.
Okay, theory is great, but theory alone doesn't get you marks in an exam, right? Application does. So let's lock this knowledge into our brains with a super easy memory trick and then jump into some real exam-style questions.
Ready for the easiest memory trick ever? For SN2, just remember 2BI. The 2 is for SN2, B is for backside attack, and I is for inversion. For SN1, remember 1CR. The 1 is for SN1, C is for carbocationic, and R is for racemization. Say it out loud right now. 2BI, 1CR. Simple. You won't forget that on exam day.
Okay, time to put it to the test. First question. Read it carefully and hunt for the keywords. What jumps out at you? Backside attack? Inversion of configuration? You know what to do. Pause now, think about it, and lock in your answer.
And the answer is, of course, B, SN2 reaction. Our little memory trick, 2BI, for backside attack and inversion, points straight to it. SN1 gives racemization, so that one's out. Awesome job if you got that right.
Let's level up. Assertion reason questions really test if you understand the why. So assertion A says SN1 leads to racemization, and reason R says the carbocation is planar. Are they both true? And more importantly, is R the correct explanation for A? Pause and really think this one through. Okay, so the answer, the assertion is true. The reason is true, and the reason is the correct explanation for the assertion. It's because the carbocation is flat that the attack can happen from both sides, which is what leads to racemization. Fantastic work if you nailed that. Now let's get into our final and maybe most important section, avoiding those common mistakes that can steal your marks.
I need you to really focus right now. These are the 5 most common traps students fall for. Number 1. Confusing R/S notation with the plus or minus sign of rotation. They are not related. Number 2. Thinking SN1 gives just inversion. No, it gives racemization, a mix. Number 3. Forgetting why it gives a mix, because the carbocation is planar. 4. Forgetting that carbocations can rearrange in SN1 reactions. And 5. Calling a racemic mixture achiral. Avoid these and you'll be golden.
So how did you do on those practice questions? Let me know your score in the comments. If you aced them, you're on the right track to becoming a CUET topper. If you stumbled a bit, no worries. That's what practice is for. Rewatch this explainer and solidify those concepts. Also, tell me what high-yield topic you want to master next. Keep learning, keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next one.